The Running Man is back with a sleek and modern remake that puts a fresh twist on the original story. It's certainly entertaining, with solid acting, sharp pacing, and enough well-shot action to keep you engaged for the full 2 hours. As a straightforward action flick, it absolutely delivers, but it doesn't quite stand up to the 1987 original. Arnold's version had a bigger charismatic edge and better world building, with over-the-top stalkers inside a darker, more grimdark game zone. Compared to that wild, larger-than-life energy, the remake feels more grounded, cleaner, and much less iconic. It's a good film, but it doesn't stand up to the original. To give the remake credit, it gets some things right, and this is where it really shines. The acting across the board is strong, with Glenn Powell delivering a grounded and believable performance as Ben Richards. He sells the desperation of a man backed into a corner, forced to make an impossible decision just to provide for his family. Opposite him, Josh Brolin plays Dan Killian with a cold, calculated confidence that makes him a genuinely effective villain, less flamboyant than the original, as he doesn't play the public-facing host of the show in the remake. That's done by Coleman Domingo as Bobby Thompson, but he's still compelling as a villain, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. The remake also delivers when it comes to action. The various set pieces are brutal, fast-paced, and surprisingly intense, leaning into the consequences of what it actually means to compete in a televised death sport. Every chase, every confrontation, and every moment of violence feels sharp and impactful. The film never drags, and it does a great job of maintaining tension from scene to scene, so even if it doesn't reach the iconic highs of the 87 version, the remake absolutely succeeds in keeping you engaged and entertained. While the remake is good, there are several areas where I think the original simply did it better. I haven't read the novel, so I'm judging this purely against the 1987 film, and the biggest change is Ben Richards' origin. In the original, he was a wrongly convicted officer who refused to fire on civilians, framed for mass murder, and forced into a death sport that instantly established the brutality of the regime. In the remake, Ben volunteers for the game out of desperation to help his sick daughter. It's not a bad idea on its own, but it doesn't sell the dystopian world nearly as effectively. The setting also feels weaker. Instead of the isolated, grim, industrial arena from the original, the remake takes place in what's basically a normal city. It's run down, sure, but it looks like places that exist in real life, and that makes the world feel less oppressive than the original's claustrophobic, hopeless battleground. And then there are the enemies. Arnold fought against unforgettable, larger-than-life stalkers, an ice-skating killer with a bladed hockey stick, a chainsaw-wielding maniac, and Dynamo, who shoots electricity while singing opera. They were ridiculous, but iconic. In the remake, the stalkers are essentially tactical special forces operators. They're dangerous, but they're generic and lack the memorable presence of the villains from the 87 film. They do the job, but they don't leave much of an impression. Another major difference between the two films is how the resistance is handled, and in this case, the original does it far better. In the 1987 version, the underground resistance is present almost from the start. Vice, one of the prisoners Richards escapes with, is already part of it, and his knowledge, motivations, and goals give the resistance a real sense of purpose. Their involvement becomes a driving force inside the arena itself, with the prisoners using their internment as an opportunity to strike against the corporation, whereas in the remake, Ben becomes involved with the resistance through chance, by who he happens to meet, instead of it being a driving force in the story. The final point I want to talk about is how the two films handle the ending, and don't worry, I won't spoil anything from the remake. In the original, the resistance hijacks the broadcast, exposes how Richards was framed, and turns the entire audience against the corporation. It builds into a full-on uprising, complete with a dramatic assault on the network's headquarters, and one of the most memorable villain send-offs of the era. The remake takes a different approach. It isn't bad, but it's definitely more restrained and less dramatic than the explosive finale of the 87 version. It goes for something safer and more grounded, rather than the wild over-the-top climax that made the original so iconic. So in the end, the Running Man remake does stand on its own as a solid, engaging action film. It's well acted, well shot, and keeps you entertained from start to finish. But when you put it next to the 1987 original, it just can't compete with the sheer personality, charm, and iconic energy that made Arnold's version a cult classic. The remake does a lot right and modernizes the concept in interesting ways, but it never quite reaches the same heights in world building, tone, or memorability. As a standalone movie, it's good. As a remake of the original, it falls short. Still, if you're a fan of action adventures or just curious to see a modern take on the idea, it's definitely worth watching.